Hey, Mike here. I just wanted to let you know that you can listen to Dark Poutine early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime. Welcome back to Dark Poutine. I am Michael Brown. With me, as usual, is my good friend Matthew Stockton. How are you, Matthew? And hello.
Hello. Hello.
We see a few people trying to tag you in the Yumber Yard, and they often misspell your name with 2 T's. Your name is spelled with 1 T. Matthew has 1 T. Explain to the folks why your name only has 1 T.
That's how my mom thought it was spelled.
So Ginger thought that Matthew had 1 T, so that's what you're saddled with. Speaking of stories, this one's particularly harrowing. It involves children. The thing is, though, it's been calling me to cover ever since I heard about it. So just a little pre-warning for you folks about the content of this one. Moving on.
The views, information, and opinions expressed during the Dark Poutine podcast are solely those of the producer and do not necessarily represent those of Curious Cast, its affiliate, Global News, nor their parent company, Chorus Entertainment.
Dark Poutine is not for the faint of heart or squeamish. Listener discretion is strongly advised. We're not experts on the topics we present, nor are we journalists. We're 2 ordinary Canadian schmucks chatting about crime and the dark side of history. Let's get to it. Put on your toque, grab yourself a double-double and a Nanaimo bar. It's time to scarf down some Dark Poutine.
You are responsible for obtaining and maintaining at your own cost all equipment needed to listen to Dark Poutine. Dark Poutine can be addictive. Side effects may include, but not be limited to, pausing and questioning the system, elevated heart rate, pondering humanity, odd looks from colleagues as you laugh out loud at work, family members not into true crime worrying about you. Positive side effects may include some perspectives and opinions that you disagree with, as well as some wokeness and empathy. If you don't think Dark Poutine is for you, consult your doctor immediately.
On the morning of August 5th, 2013, Campbellton, New Brunswick, faced an unthinkable tragedy. Police and first responders were called to an apartment above Reptile Ocean, the town's reptile and fish shop, where they found Connor and Noah Barthe, brothers aged 6 and 4, dead after a sleepover with their friend Jayce Savoie. Sometime in the night, a 12-foot, 53-pound African rock python owned by shopkeeper Jean-Claude Savoie escaped its enclosure, slithered through a vent, and fatally attacked the sleeping boys. The official cause of death was traumatic asphyxia by constriction, a finding that shocked the small community and quickly attracted national and international attention. As investigators began their work, residents struggled to comprehend how a night of friendship ended in such horror. Savoie was charged with criminal negligence causing death, setting the stage for a legal and ethical debate that would raise tough questions and stir deep emotions far beyond Campbellton. You are listening to Dark Poutine, episode 388, The Campbellton Python Tragedy, Connor and Noah Barthe. Campbellton, New Brunswick sits beside the Restigouche River, a crossroads where cultures and history still echo. Long before the town existed, the Mi'kmaq people called the region home, thriving on the land's salmon runs and rich forests. In the mid-18th century, the area became a refuge for displaced Acadians who were helped through the brutal winters by local indigenous communities. It then became a contested ground in the final naval clash of the 7 Years' War, the Battle of the Restigouche. By the 19th century, Scottish settlers like Robert Ferguson turned Campbellton into a hub for salmon fishing, shipbuilding, and trade industries that bolstered the community's resilience through blazes and setbacks that nearly wiped Campbellton from the map. The arrival of the Intercolonial Railway sparked growth, connecting the city as a gateway between the Atlantic provinces and Quebec. Today, Campbellton remains modest in size with around 7,000 residents. Its economy is driven by healthcare, public service, and retail, and remains tied to the river and forests through fishing and tourism. The city's character blends the endurance of its indigenous, Acadian, and Scottish roots, a welcoming place but not untouched by hardship or change. It was against this quiet, tight-knit backdrop that the tragic story of the Barthe brothers unfolded. Connor and Noah Barthe were brothers from Campbellton. They were deeply loved by their parents, Mandy Tricarton and Andrew Barthe, as well as by their extended family and friends. Many remember Connor and Noah as joyful, spirited boys who embraced every day together. Connor, the older brother at 6, was often described as protective and thoughtful when it came to his little brother. Quote, Connor took care of Noah the way an older brother should, a relative told CBC News. They were inseparable, end quote. Their bond stood out to everyone who knew them, whether at school, in the neighborhood, or among their extended family.
Yeah, they sounds like they're so close in life, right? They kind of remind me of my brother and I were almost the same age, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that sort of closeness of these two boys, like you have the photo of them in the script here, and they're just adorable, and like my heart breaks looking at that photo.
Yeah, mine too.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's just like both of them. It's just so hard to comprehend what the loss of these two boys and the sheer horror of it, and how the family must have felt.
When we're talking about young people, every single time I can't help but think about the word potential. I mean, these guys were 6 and 4. They had not even begun to live. Who knows what they would have become? I guess we'll never know because of what happened to them.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I usually go to potential when they're, teens. But when I see little boys like this, I just want, it's innocence. I just want to protect them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's terrible.
It
Absolutely
really is.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Those poor kids.
Yeah. Noah, just 4 years old, was known for his infectious laughter and playful nature. Quote, Noah could light up a room with his smile, said a family friend in a local interview. The two boys were often seen outside, playing in the yard, exploring, and filling even the quietest moments with energy. The family described them as typical boys who enjoyed running, climbing, and notably looked forward to time spent with their friend Jayce Savoie, whose dad, Jean-Claude, owned the Reptile Ocean pet shop nearby. Their mother later shared with news outlets that the boys loved animals and were adventurous, never shying away from new experiences. Quote, they were happy for boys, full of life, always getting into mischief, the good kind together, she said in a statement through Mars Funeral Home in Campbellton. Their personalities were defined by how much they cared for each other. If Connor was there, you'd find Noah close behind. Quote, you couldn't ask for a better pair of brothers or better sons, said another family member during the memorial for the pair. One member of the Campbellton community, shaken by the loss, echoed these memories, describing Connor and Noah as, quote, the kind of boys everyone knew and loved, always together, always laughing. The National Post reported, quote, the Barthe boys appeared to have developed a comfort level with snakes and other reptiles at a young age, perhaps because they grew up next door to Reptile Ocean, owned by Jean-Claude Savoie, who lived on the second floor with his young son, end quote. This proximity made it common for Connor and Noah to visit, play, and have sleepovers at Jayce's apartment above the pet shop, which was central to the events leading up to the tragedy. Jean-Claude Savoie was well known in Campbellton for his deep local roots. and as the owner of Reptile Ocean, a pet shop unlike any other in New Brunswick. Reptile Ocean stood out on the city's main drag. Savoie's reputation in town was mixed. To some, he was a knowledgeable and devoted animal keeper. To others, his collection of exotic reptiles was cause for concern, especially in a quiet place where children walked to school and neighbors kept an eye on each other's business.
It's a reminder that what fascinates also unsettles, right?
Yeah,
A glass case filled with snakes might feel exotic to some, and others look at it as risk, right? Waiting for a crack in that enclosure.
Savoie opened Reptile Ocean around 2003, according to public records, launching his venture as both a storefront and private menagerie. The shop gained local fame, drawing visitors with its rows of aquariums and terrariums filled with snakes, lizards, turtles, and tropical fish. According to Global News, Savoie housed over 100 reptiles, including rare and often large snakes like Burmese pythons and the African rock python. The store was Savoie's pride, and he frequently offered tours to local children and families, a fact confirmed by several neighborhood parents interviewed by CBC News. Quote, "The kids would come in and see the snakes and the turtles, and Jean-Claude would explain where each animal came from," a frequent visitor told reporters just after the tragedy. Savoie's love for herpetoculture ran deep, and he considered himself both an educator and protector of animals that many in Campbellton viewed with suspicion. Herpetoculture is the practice of keeping, breeding, and caring for live reptiles and amphibians in captivity as a hobby or commercial endeavor. It encompasses a wide range of practices, from designing sophisticated bioactive habitats to selecting for desirable traits like color and pattern in breeding projects. And, importantly, it can play a role in the conservation of these species. Responsible herpetoculture also involves promoting awareness, discouraging the collection of wild animals, and ensuring that captive-bred animals are not released into the wild. In interviews, Savoie described the shop's upkeep as, quote, "a labor of love," claiming to have studied reptile care on his own since adolescence. Despite this dedication, concerns about the shop circulated. Former volunteers and acquaintances told Global News that Savoie would sometimes travel to animal expos in Montreal to acquire new snakes, occasionally bringing back animals that were not on New Brunswick's regulated species list. Quote, "He was passionate, but sometimes took risks," a former volunteer said, referencing Savoie's tendency to house large and potentially dangerous snakes. The store was not just a business. It was also his family's home. The upstairs apartment was commonly the site of sleepovers and evening gathering for Jayce's friends. The arrangement blurred the line between domestic life and the risks associated with keeping exotic reptiles, an issue that would be scrutinized in the aftermath. Reptile Ocean had encountered official attention even before the tragedy. CBC News and the National Post reported that the province's Fish and Wildlife Office had previously visited the shop regarding Savoie's possession of a prohibited species. However, the timeline and outcome of those actions remain unclear in public records. Nonetheless, Savoie continued to operate, and the African rock python remained in his personal collection for over a decade. Snake parents, like our friend Morgan Knudsen at the Supernatural Circumstances podcast, are well aware of the bias against snakes as pets. Humanity's fear and suspicion of snakes span centuries, rooted in a blend of biology, myth, and cultural storytelling. Researchers note that many people, quote, "are often afraid of snakes because of a combination of factors ranging from the fear of venomous bites to possible deep-rooted evolutionary traits that helped humans survive by avoiding potentially dangerous animals," end quote. This primal aversion, sometimes blossoming into a clinical ophidiophobia, phobia of snakes, persists even in societies where most snakes pose little threat. Stories about snakes and their symbolism go back to the oldest written myths. In the Bible, the serpent tempts Eve in the Garden of Eden, forever linking snakes to ideas of deceit and danger. As Rudyard Kipling wrote, quote, "I hate and fear snakes, because if you look into the eyes of any snake, you will see that it knows all and more of the mystery of man's fall, and that it feels all the contempt that the devil felt when Adam was evicted from Eden. Besides which, its bite is generally fatal, and it twists up trouser legs." End quote. Lighten up, Rudyard. Jeepers. In Western traditions, especially those rooted in the Bible, the snake is portrayed as, quote, a cunning, dark, filthy, and evil creature, end quote. Yet in places like ancient Egypt and among Aztecs, snakes took on meanings of life, fertility, and protection. Even where respect exists, wariness prevails. American Southern folklore is filled with stories about vengeful snakes, though experts say these tales are unfounded. Quote, they are not vengeful and do not chase people out of sheer hate, according to folklore summaries. In Hindu philosophy, the snake appears in parables about the dangers of misperception, such as mistaking a rope for a serpent. Popular culture keeps fear alive. Indiana Jones famously groans, snakes. Why did it have to be snakes? Movies, books, and news stories often cast snakes as monsters or villains. Science finds that people, even young children, are remarkably quick at spotting snakes, suggesting an evolutionary hardwiring for this fear. Though mythology and research show snakes as both feared and revered, the persistent bias rooted in survival, belief, and storytelling continues to define how humans see snakes today.
Yeah, and the fear isn't just superstition. It's rooted in how our brains are wired to spot danger in the grass before it strikes. And
right.
You can call it myth, but it's also survival memory, right? Passed down like this genetic hiss, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And, I need to point out, no animal is a bad animal.
Correct.
They are what they are. Snakes do snake things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to keep them, like any animal, you need to be responsible for them and for the people around you and for their safety.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And if somebody's afraid of a snake, if you're a snake owner, you need to understand that and accept it. You don't poo-poo the person. It's like, no, you're the one with the animal. You have to respect human beings,
right,
feelings and positions. And even Steve, Steve's a chunky lad.
He is.
He's a chunky lad, and some people are afraid of dogs. So in the elevator, like one woman now is like best buddies with Steve because we slowly introduced. And if kids want to pet Steve, I teach them how to do it responsibly. And if they're too young to understand and like just jump on his back or something, little kids don't know what they're doing. I just keep them away. Steve is my responsibility.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. And no matter what animal you have, it's your responsibility to make sure others are safe.
100%. While some fear them, many people love reptiles. One such group is the writers at reptileapartment.com, an American website dedicated to keeping reptiles, arachnids, insects, and amphibians safely in apartment settings. During the months leading up to the tragic incident, one of the writers for the site visited Reptile Ocean to see Savoie's alligators. The writer described a rare behind-the-scenes experience at Jean-Claude Savoue's shop, focusing on direct encounters with the American alligators kept there. From the first moment, the store makes an impression. Visitors cross a small bridge and look down at an exhibit with large, live alligators swimming or basking, the writer wrote. The writer emphasizes this is not the standard tour and warns, quote, don't ask Jean-Claude if you can play with the alligators, end quote. Savoie, who had been working with crocodilians since the age of 7, is portrayed as deeply knowledgeable. While he is busy running the shop during the visit, he shares details about alligator behavior, telling stories about their gentle parenting, like females helping their hatchlings emerge from their eggs. During the visit, Jean-Claude's friend, Tim, known for his strength and trusted enough to work with Savoie's more aggressive crocodiles, joins them in the enclosure. Tim demonstrates a calm, experienced approach to Junior, a large male alligator, patting his snout and encouraging the writer to move closer, eventually guiding them through a safe interaction. The writer recalls both awe and fear at the scale and power of the animal, calling Junior, quote, over 300 pounds of solid muscle. And he notes that years of free handling venomous snakes, this experience tops any previous sense of danger. Yet it's clear that under Jean-Claude's and Tim's supervision, safety and animal welfare are priorities. Quote, Junior and his enclosure mates expressed natural behaviors because they were treated and maintained as naturally as possible. It's not in a sideshow fashion, end quote. Hands-on moments like briefly stroking Junior's snout or feeling the muscular tail of a female are intense but carefully watched. The writer is reminded just how strong and aware these animals are, even as a simple tail flick nearly knocks him off balance. The experience concludes with gratitude toward Jean-Claude and Tim citing the educational value of seeing such animals, quote, on their own terms, and noting the professionalism with which they were handled. The summary captures Reptile Ocean both as a place of wonder and real risk, reflecting the respect and caution that Savoie and his small circle of helpers tried to maintain. The shop and Savoie's home were more than a local curiosity. They were a hub, a place where exotic animals coexisted with ordinary family life. Savoie once told the National Post, quote, "I never thought anything could happen. The snakes were my life. I took care of them as best I could," end quote. In the summer of 2013, with the familiar store still welcoming regulars and children upstairs preparing for a sleepover, few in Campbellton could have predicted the devastating turn that would come on that August night. Yet beneath the surface, questions about risk, responsibility, and the wisdom of keeping such animals so close to home lingered, setting the stage for events that would forever change the town. More after a quick break. And we are back at the halfway point. Matthew, thoughts on this strange and tragic story so far?
Yeah, it's just, I mean, we're going to get into the court and the laws and everything. It's one of these truly sad situations where it was circumstance. Things should have been handled better. Nobody wanted this to happen. I do feel bad for everyone involved in this,
including Jean-Claude Savoie.
Absolutely. Like, yes, and we can talk about responsibility stuff later, but
what occurred is the last thing that poor man expected or wanted.
100% he carries that burden as well.
Yep.
But these two cute boys lost their lives.
Yes. On August 4th, 2013, Connor and Noah Barthe were dropped off by their mother, Mandy Trécartin, for a typical evening sleepover with Savoie's son, Jayce, in his father's apartment. Earlier that day, the children visited a family farm, played with livestock, and returned muddy, happy, and tired. Jean-Claude Savoie, their next-door neighbor, was a trusted friend. Mandy later told the court, "I felt they would be as safe with him as they would be with me." She'd even posted photos of her sons and Jayce Savoie helping to clean the enclosure of the very snake that killed them just months before the tragic events of August 5th, 2013. That evening, the boys set up mattresses in the living room for the night. Unbeknownst to them, the python's vent cover had either been knocked off or left loose after past escapes. Sometime during the night, the snake, likely drawn, according to a reptile expert, by the scent left on the boys from playing with farm animals earlier that day, managed to squeeze through the vent, moved along a short, flexible coil, and entered the ceiling space over the living room. Police later discovered that 3 foam ceiling tiles had fallen to the floor near the mattresses. The python, searching and heavy, apparently pressed down with enough force for the tiles to collapse, dropping it directly onto the sleeping boys.
Yeah, that's just almost biblical, right? Like, safety stripped away from the ceiling itself, and like the boys didn't even have a chance. It's just horrifying. That's just a horrifying image.
Yeah, I can't even imagine it. What happened next in that room was, according to expert testimony, swift and brutal. The python coiled around its prey, constricting and repeatedly biting. Dr. Marek Godlewski, the pathologist who performed the autopsies, testified that most of the puncture wounds were found on the face, and that Connor suffered multiple puncture wounds, abrasions, and bruises, as well as hemorrhages in his neck muscles. Noah had multiple puncture wounds compatible with bites over his body. Blood covered the upper body of one boy. I do agree the pattern of the wounds were consistent with the pattern of the teeth of this snake, Godlewski later confirmed. The cause of death was determined to be consistent and clear: asphyxia due to neck strangulation, the result of the snake's powerful coils. morning brought the grim discovery. Savoie, returning to the living room, found the two boys dead, still on their mattresses and covered in wounds. In panic, he immediately called 911. According to court documents, Savoie said to the dispatcher, "2 children are dead. A python got out and killed the 2 kids." RCMP Constable Stéphane Duga, one of the first on scene, described Savoie as wearing a bloody shirt, with the lifeless bodies of the young boys nearby. He continued, "I knew at the time not much could be done. There was lots of blood. Paramedics could only shake their heads in helpless acknowledgement." One first responder later said, "No one ever thinks they'll walk into something like this. 2 little boys, gone in an instant. Nobody will forget what happened here." The python itself was still in the apartment, found in the laundry room and resisting capture. When Savoie put it back in its enclosure, according to a National Post article, the snake lunged, snapped its jaws, and made growling noises, and rose up nearly 6 feet, smashing against the glass. Constable Eric Millet described seeing the python rise straight up, more than he'd ever expected a reptile could, and believed it was trying to return to the scene, possibly to ingest what it had just killed.
So that image is the primal.
Yeah.
That's primal. And that's an animal testing its boundaries, showing power that had been underestimated all along.
Yeah, definitely.
And, the warning signs were there, hissing beneath the surface. But people convinced themselves that the walls would hold. They convinced themselves that this wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, totally. The small apartment, once the site of countless sleepovers and ordinary evenings, was now a scene of horror, blood-stained, chaotic, and forever changed by the vulnerabilities of a flawed enclosure and a single catastrophic night. The African rock python at the center of the Campbellton tragedy, unnamed in news articles, was immense. Measured at 12 feet 4 inches 3.8 meters long and weighing around 53 pounds 24 kilograms with a girth of 12 inches at its thickest point. The enclosure, a towering floor-to-ceiling plexiglass or tempered glass case, shared a wall with the living room in Jean-Claude Savoie's apartment above the Reptile Ocean pet store. The space aimed to replicate a secure, observation-friendly habitat, but testimony would later describe serious flaws. At the very top of the enclosure was a vent meant for air circulation, leading to a duct system. This vent's cover routinely fell or was left off and, according to a volunteer, needed to be screwed on to keep it in place. Savoie and others underestimated the ability of such a large snake to squeeze through the vent. Witnesses said the python appeared bulkier than the opening, leading some to doubt an escape was possible. Despite multiple cautions, vulnerabilities persisted. Weeks before the tragedy, the python had escaped through the same vent and was found halfway out of the duct. Savoie was seen placing the vent cover back, but without screwing it in. Another employee described the enclosure as flawed and said, "I knew what the snake was capable of. It can overtake any man. The sense of security was largely psychological, not structural."
Yeah, this gap between feeling safe and being safe, it's a big gap, right? They relied on habit and, frankly, past luck.
Yeah, that's no way to run a snake enclosure.
Right? Oh, he got away, but we caught him, instead of hardware that removes a hazard. And once an unsecured vent is treated as normal, the risk lies coiled right there waiting. Like, this failure isn't random, it's inevitable.
Yeah, if you think about it, it was just a snake doing snake's things. It's the idea that you can't be mad when a snake bites you. It's just being what it is. In other words, don't be surprised when someone or something, in this case an animal, shows you their true nature. Believe them the first time. Savoie's standing in the city became the subject of heated debate after the tragedy. Some neighbors defended him, noting his attention to the well-being of his animals, while others questioned his judgment. "He cared about those reptiles and had a passion for them. You could see that," said a former customer to CBC News. But others felt uneasy about a collection that included one of the world's largest snake species. After the incident, one acquaintance told Global News, "Jean-Claude never thought the python would get out. He believed the enclosure was safe for years. Police began a criminal investigation after Connor and Noah Barthe died due to immediate concerns about potential negligence or breaches of provincial wildlife laws." According to Global News, Mike MacDonald, curator of the Maritime Reptile Zoo in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, knows reptiles. He knew that python. He knows Savoie, who's been a friend for years, and he can't figure out what happened. It's been kind of a blur, he said. I talked to Jean-Claude on Monday for a bit, and he's devastated. Just can't believe this is happening. Jean-Claude Savoie told Global News that he received the African rock python from a government wildlife agency over 10 years before the incident, reluctantly accepting the snake. I didn't even want the snake, Savoie said, but I didn't want to see it euthanized. Provincial officials, citing the ongoing criminal investigation, declined to discuss details but confirmed African rock pythons are banned in New Brunswick with exceptions only for accredited zoos. Permits are never issued to keep an illegal exotic animal as a pet, said provincial spokesman Steve Benteau. Officials removed all of Jean-Claude Savoie's remaining animals from the Reptile Ocean property. A total of 27 illegal animals were seized, including 4 large American alligators that had to be euthanized on site because no local zoo could take them in safely. The Department of Natural Resources explained that this decision was made due to safety concerns for those involved in relocating the animals. Other animals, such as various crocodile species, dwarf caimans, sulcata tortoises, iguanas, and green anacondas, were taken away by zoo staff and wildlife authorities. Some reptiles were relocated to accredited institutions or sanctuaries, but some were destroyed due to regulatory or safety constraints. Savoie's associate Mike McDonald said Savoie would have needed some kind of license, though he was unsure of specifics. Over the years, Reptile Ocean was listed variously as a zoo, reptile display, and exotic animals exhibit before shifting in 2011 to a pet store. Admission was once charged, but later the public could view animals for free and animals on the main floor were for sale. The African rock python, however, was not for sale and lived as part of his private collection. The snake was euthanized the day after the incident, so a necropsy could be performed. Bry Loyst, curator of the Indian River Reptile Zoo in Indian River, Ontario, was puzzled by the deaths of the boys. Globally, deaths caused by pythons are extremely rare. Estimates suggest there are only about 1 or 2 fatalities per year worldwide from large non-venomous constrictor snakes, such as pythons. Most snakebite deaths involve venomous species, close to 80,000 annually. Constrictor-related deaths account for a tiny fraction of overall snakebite mortality annually. Referring to pythons, Bry Loyst told Global News, quote, "We're not on their menu," end quote. Unaware that the children had been playing with farm animals earlier in the day, Loyst speculated that the scent on the boys might have come from other animals in the pet shop, stating, quote, "They must have smelled great," end quote.
That line lands wrong.
Yep.
It reduces 2 little boys to bait, as if their deaths were just a matter of mistaken prey drive.
It's insensitive for sure, and I can't believe that this guy said it in an interview.
Yeah, and even if that's true, it's not the kind of explanation that offers much comfort, and it sharpens the sense of the risk that was underestimated from the start. And I hope he regrets saying that, because I just can't imagine the poor parents hearing that.
Yeah, I'm sure he does.
It's pretty tone deaf. I'm going to call it tone deaf, right?
Yeah, that's kind. The RCMP Major Crime Unit for Northern New Brunswick took the lead in the investigation. Corporal Gabriel DeVoe headed the inquiry, working under Sergeant Ryu of the Fredericton Major Crime Unit. From the start, the police faced an unprecedented scenario. 2 young boys were killed during a sleepover, not by a person, but by an escaped African rock python from a private apartment above a pet shop. This had to be a unique investigation for all of them. Over the following months, investigators interviewed witnesses, reviewed the animal's enclosure, and tried to map out how the tragedy occurred. By November 2013, the investigation team had completed its work. A conference call was held on November 14, 2013, with participants including Corporal DeVoe and Sergeant Ryu. Their consensus was clear. The investigation does not support an offense of causing death by criminal negligence. In their view, there was no evidence that Savoie's actions had crossed the high threshold for criminal liability. This decision was communicated directly and personally to the Barthe family. As recorded in the judgment, Corporal DeVoe met with Connor and Noah's mother and father separately. The mother seemed to understand, though she was deeply saddened. The father was angry and frustrated, believing charges should have been filed against Savoie. The emotional fallout underscored how polarizing the case had become in Campbellton and beyond. Not long after, the file was sent to the RCMP's H Division in Halifax, Nova Scotia, for a second review. Reviewers there agreed. No submission should be made to the Provincial Attorney General for prosecution. The RCMP seemed to have closed the book on the tragedy twice, ruling out criminal charges. Despite 2 internal reviews clearing Savoie, the file was unexpectedly reopened on February 5, 2014 and reassigned to Inspector Mark Bertrand for a new investigation. The reasons for reopening have never been fully explained in public records, but the case's high profile and public controversy likely played a role, as well as possible new questions about the initial police process. Within the RCMP and the justice system, disagreements simmered. The earlier decisions not to lay charges had their critics. Some officers and outside observers believed Savoie's conduct fell short of any criminal threshold, but others insisted the risks of keeping such a snake required a legal reckoning. The rift extended to the upper echelons of law enforcement and the justice system. This was not simply a procedural review. It was a deliberate reconsideration of how duty of care and risk are understood in Canadian law, especially in cases involving exotic animals. This case was referred to 2 case conferences with prosecutors from the Office of the Attorney General. This committee, described officially as the Public Prosecution's Case Consultation and Risk Management Committee, considered the complexities and risks anew in September and December 2014. After the second case conference held on December 2, 2014, the direction changed sharply. Prosecutors concluded that there were reasonable and probable grounds, not only that an offense had been committed, but also that there was a, quote, reasonable prospect the Crown Counsel could convict Savoie on a charge of criminal negligence causing death. This reversed the findings of both RCMP reviews and set the stage for prosecution. On February 15, 2015, Jean-Claude Savoie was formally charged with 2 counts of criminal negligence causing death nearly 2 years after the boys died. In Canadian law, criminal negligence causing death arises when, quote, a person shows wanton or reckless disregard for the lives or safety of other persons, end quote, leading to death. Meaning not just a tragic mistake, but a pattern of action or inaction so deficient it amounts to criminal wrongdoing. Charging Savoie years after the tragedy reflected how difficult it was for authorities to reach a consensus on the thresholds of criminal accountability in rare and tragic situations. The law requires proof that the accused's conduct, viewed objectively, departed markedly from what a reasonable person would do in the circumstances. The key questions became, was housing a large prohibited python in an upstairs apartment above a pet store so dangerous, and was the enclosure so flawed that it met this standard? The case was unique in its facts, its emotional weight, and its legal implications, a fact not lost on the prosecutors or the community. During the trial's opening, the Crown argued that Savoie owed a duty of care not only to his own son, but to all children present in the apartment. Prosecutors alleged that Savoie knew, or ought to have known, about the risks associated with the enclosure, particularly in light of prior escape incidents, and that his failure to secure the python properly met the standard for criminal negligence. In contrast, the defense argued the incident was a heartbreaking accident. Savoie had cared for the snake for more than a decade without a single incident, and no evidence suggested he intended or even imagined the danger that would unfold. Savoie's defense insisted, quote, he simply didn't believe the large snake could possibly fit through the vent, end quote, describing a tragic misjudgment, not a disregard for safety. Witnesses included former shop volunteers, police investigators, and Savoie himself. Volunteers described previous escape attempts and voiced concern about the enclosure's vent. Police investigators detailed their scene analysis. Savoie testified in his own defense, maintaining he believed the enclosure was secure, a belief shared by others at the time. Overriding much of the testimony was the debate about expert and police opinions. The judge ruled that Corporal DeVoe's opinion that Savoie had committed no crime could not be presented to the jury. This reflected the, quote, ultimate issue rule. Police witnesses cannot offer their opinions that go directly to the legal question at stake, since those are for the jury to decide. As the judgment put it, quote, the opinion of the head of the initial investigation that there was no criminal offense committed by Mr. Savoie was the very question the jury had to decide, and thus the opinion offended the ultimate issue rule, end quote. Allowing it would, quote, usurp the function of the jury, end quote. Midway through the jury trial, controversy erupted when a juror was dismissed after it was discovered they had undisclosed ties to Savoie, introducing concern about impartiality. The remaining jury members heard detailed instructions from the judge as to their task. In his final instructions, the judge underscored that to convict, jurors needed to agree on 3 elements. There must have been a legal duty of care. Savoie's conduct must have shown, quote, wanton or reckless disregard for life or safety, and this must have caused the boys' deaths. The threshold was high, quote, not every mistake or even every lapse in judgment is a crime, the judge reminded the jury. After days of testimony and 8 hours of deliberations, the jury returned its verdict on November 1st, 2016. 11 jurors, one having been dismissed for the aforementioned conflict, found Jean-Claude Savoie not guilty of criminal negligence causing death in the snake-related deaths of Connor and Noah Barthe. The courtroom sat silent as the foreperson spoke. Savoie, his face tight with emotion, listened as the charges that had hung over him for more than 3 years were dismissed. Defense lawyer Leslie Matcham, his voice firm but weighted, addressed the assembled press and public with a phrase that echoed beyond the courthouse. Quote, this is not a case where there are winners. This tragedy took its tremendous toll on him, end quote. Outside the courthouse, reactions varied sharply. For Savoie and his family, there was clear relief, if not celebration. A terrible ordeal had ended, but the scars remained. Many in Campbellton, however, felt renewed pain and raw uncertainty. The response in Campbellton was swift and visceral. For the tight-knit town, the children's deaths, and now the not guilty verdict, triggered outrage, confusion, and ongoing sorrow. Parents struggled to reconcile their children's safety with the knowledge that a lethal snake had lived unregulated within walking distance. Candlelight vigils and memorials for Connor and Noah offered some solace. Many in the community pointed the blame not just at Savoie, but the broader system that had allowed such a tragedy to occur. I see you've got a lot written here, Matthew, so let's get into this.
Yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around. Like a banned snake kept in plain sight or known. Yep. It escapes, kills 2 kids, and yet the system offers no clear accountability. There's no clear accountability on here.
No.
And for the families and for the town, that lack of clarity isn't just frustrating. In some ways, it's kind of unconscionable.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone is just left holding this, right? And Jean-Claude himself, you know, he got the African rock python from a government wildlife agency, he said, about 10 years before, and he claimed that he accepted it reluctantly.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want it euthanized, which is decent. But then provincial officers are confirming that African rock pythons are banned. So why is a government agency giving somebody a banned snake?
Good question.
Right?
Yep. So if they're going to give him a snake that's banned, they should give him some sort of special permit for it and ensure that he's looking after it.
So you've got this contradictory picture.
Yep.
You know, officially prohibited, yet apparently passed along through a government channel into his care and then left there uninspected for over a decade, right? So, of course, I believe Savoie must have felt so terrible that this happened, and maybe he should have got some jail time. But he's in his own jail now, I'm sure, right? But let's point the finger at the government agency that started all of this in the first place. Like a government agency giving a banned snake without a permit to somebody else and just left. It's like there's responsibility right there. And I think that I hold that is the point of failure. It was when the government agency gave somebody else a snake that's a banned snake and didn't follow up. That's the failure. in a lot of ways, not just Savoie's, right? Savoie was being decent. He's trying to do a decent thing and not have a creature killed.
Right. The public debate quickly swelled beyond Campbellton. In the New Brunswick legislature, lawmakers faced pressure to strengthen exotic animal regulations. Questions were posed about the province's list of permitted exotic animals, with some MLAs voicing frustration that an African rock python explicitly banned had been quietly housed above a pet store. Despite outrage and calls for tighter laws, meaningful regulatory change was slow. The government initiated reviews of its exotic animals policy, but gaps in enforcement and inspection remained. Critics argued the province was failing to learn from tragedy, leaving families across New Brunswick and Canada fearing a similar fate. From the first wire service alert, the Campbellton case exploded into world news. Headlines fanned global fascination and fear, often distorting details. Some stories implied pythons were commonly kept as pets in Canada. Others claimed the snake had been a household favorite or even described it as tame, overlooking its illegal status and massive size. The rumor mill turned quickly in Campbellton as well, with locals speculating about past escapes and suggesting other shops in town might also be keeping dangerous animals. Some outlets replayed the same few grisly facts, reinforcing public anxiety: giant snakes, children in peril, failures of oversight. Media coverage shaped the narrative around guilt and safety. Savoie was alternately vilified and pitied, while the grieving Barthe family was thrust unwittingly into the glare. In Canada and beyond, the case sharpened a debate about whether any private citizen should have the right to keep such powerful and unpredictable creatures within a residential neighborhood. Even as the case closed in the courtroom, major questions lingered. The tragic deaths of Connor and Noah forced Canadians to reckon with the boundaries of legal responsibility for exotic animals, where the line sits between tragedy and crime. The legal test for wanton or reckless disregard was brought under a harsh spotlight. Was it enough for Savoie to believe the enclosure was secure, or should he have anticipated every risk that came with housing a prohibited animal? And when those risks become reality, who bears the weight? Owner, authorities, or all of society? For the Barthe family, the outcome brought little relief. The boys' parents left court without the sense of closure that comes from accountability or a clear public admission of guilt. For Jean-Claude Savoie, the trial's end did not signal peace. He stopped speaking publicly and retreated from view, leaving many of his own wounds invisible. The children's names, meanwhile, became a legacy invoked in debates over animal safety across Canada. Years later, Campbellton still remembers. Parents remain wary. Legislatures continue to cite the case as they debate animal laws, and the fatal night is raised whenever questions of pet regulation arise. In the end, the lesson still painfully learned is clear. Neglect of risk, however well-intentioned or obscured by routine, can breed catastrophe. The memory of Connor and Noah Barthe and the debate over who protects the vulnerable will not soon fade. And that's it for Dark Poutine episode 388, The Campbellton Python Tragedy, Connor and Noah Barthe. That's right, it's time for voicemails. You can leave us a message at 1-877-327-5786 or 1-877-DARK-PTN. We'd love to hear from you. Let's see who called us this week. Here's our first voicemail.
Hello, my name is Georgina. I've been listening to your podcast for many years, and I've always been a fan. And I've debated about calling in a few times. Just wanted to talk about, my family history, I guess, a little bit. And it's just been something that's really hard to call in about because it's been a family tragedy. And I'm from Saskatchewan, and my dad experienced something very traumatic at the age of 7, where he witnessed majority of his family be murdered, and happened in Buffalo Narrows, Saskatchewan, back in 1969, January 30th, I do believe. apparently the person who did it kind of was a copycat of the Shell Lake Massacre, which I do believe you covered in the past. Yeah, it's just something that me and my sister have always wanted answers to and always had questions, but family that were survivors, of course, were very traumatized by the whole thing, so it was very hard for some people to talk about it. And yeah, I just wanted to know if that was maybe something you'd be interested in doing. My father is now passed away when I was a child, so unable to get any answers there. It's just something that was always unfinished and something I've always wanted to learn about, I guess. Just I always felt like you don't know where you're going unless you know where you're coming from. So yeah, it's just something me and my sister always just wanted to know about, and I've looked it up online. There's not lots, but maybe that's just something to consider. But yeah, thank you, and have a great day, and go shit in your hat. Bye.
Wow, after telling us that tragic story, she still managed to tell us to go shit in our hats, and I appreciate that very much. So what she is referring to is...
the Peterson family.
Yeah, the Peterson family, and a person named Frederick Moses McCallum, who broke the door down to their Buffalo Narrows home and then proceeded to kill the whole family.
Seven.
Yes, 7 people, except the witness who was left alive.
Yeah, I think that we should maybe cover this for Georgina.
I have added it to the list, and I will reach out to Georgina. I've got her phone number here, and we will have a discussion about covering this case.
And yeah, I think let's get this on the list. Thank you, Georgina, so much for calling in, because I'm just reading this. Sorry, we Googled while you were talking, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's a horrific case. I was unaware of it to this point, but yeah. As she told us to go shit in her hat, I think that she might be open to us giving her a job. So, Matthew, what do you think Georgina does for work?
I'm pictured Georgina making furniture.
Making furniture. That's interesting. Whenever somebody is given a job or tells me about a job creating things, doing woodworking, I remember my father, he used to build things in our basement. And one time he built a cabinet that he spent a long time on. And when he tried to move it outside, he realized it was too big to fit out of the basement opening. So, oh well.
That's hilarious. Georgina, there's a lesson for you. If you're making stuff in the basement, make sure it fits out the door. There's nothing like a good, solid wooden chair.
I love my dad's work. I do have a couple of his folding tables still, one here in my office with me. So, yeah, a little memory of my dad. But yes, we have put that case onto our list, and I'll reach out to Georgina at some point, and we'll have a discussion about that. In the meantime, let's listen to our next voicemail.
Well, this is Marion from Queens, New York. I'm back listening to the program. I took a hiatus, and I just was listening to the 2-parter about the gay purge. And my uncle was gay, and my cousin was gay. And, of course, in my family, I grew up in the late 50s and 60s. You didn't talk about sexuality, no less homosexuality, and they were both the black sheep. And my cousin died of AIDS from using drugs, and he lived in Switzerland. But I was going to say 2 things. I'm old enough to remember in the West Village, the Stonewall uprising, and I didn't understand it then, and we couldn't talk about it. And I was thinking as I'm listening to all this homophobic stuff, in my experience, the worst homophobes are people who are latently homophobic and can't deal with their feelings, or maybe latently gay. And I'm thinking of J. Edgar Hoover and what's come out with him of late. Anyway, I'm going to send you some donut money, and my dog, Cat, sends her love, plus my 7 cats, 2 turtles, and the parakeets. We all love you very much. Bye-bye.
Oh, dear.
I love Mary. Mary is their name, right?
Marion, yeah.
There's a lot to be said for that. Like, sort of people that, if you stop and think about people that are like so anti-gay, it's like, methinks he doth protest too much,
Right.
to quote Shakespeare, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We've given Marion a job before, so I think perhaps we should just give her a nickname. And because we know she has so many pets, let's call her Menagerie Mary from now on.
Love it.
Whenever I hear her accent, I think, I need to visit New York. I've never been there. I know everybody else has, but no, not this guy. But yeah, I'm a little nervous.
A lot of rough stuff happening right now, and people are a bit wary and see where it all goes. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. Yeah, I'm sure that things will calm down soon, and we'll get back to doing what we usually do. Here's to hoping, anyway. That's it for this week's voicemails. Again, you can leave us one at 1-877-327-5786 or 1-877-DARK-PTN. We'd love to hear from you, even if it is just to say hi and to tell us to go shit in our hats. If you're stumped for what to chat with us about, a quick story is welcome. We don't have any donut money donors or patrons to speak of this week, but we know you still love us anyway. Love you too. Thanks to all our patrons and donut money donors past and present for your generosity. It helps to keep the show going. You can become a patron of Dark Poutine at patreon.com/darkpoutine. For a one-time donation, you can send us donut money via PayPal or interact using our email address, darkpoutinepodcast@gmail.com. If you don't already subscribe to the show, it would mean a lot if you did. You can easily find Dark Poutine on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. If you haven't gotten yours yet, my 2 books are available to order via links on the Dark Poutine website or anywhere fine books are sold. And speaking of darkpoutine.com, check it out for show notes and other cool stuff. We'd appreciate it if you gave Dark Poutine a like or a follow on Facebook and Instagram. Most importantly, thank you for listening. Tell your friends about us. Word of mouth is a powerful thing. And that is it for this episode of Dark Poutine. So until next time, as per usual, don't forget to be a good egg and not a bad apple. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.